Hey.
You got any Kathy's ready back there?
We're ready.
Sorry, that wasn't my starting.
That's cool.
Okay.
I can adjust.
All right. At age 15, Mindy McConnell took her first line of meth. Classes interfered with my drug life, she said. She was 17, out of control, addicted to drugs, and became pregnant. She couldn't hold a job because she was either too high or too sick to ever go in. And throughout her years of addiction, she lost kidney functions, chased her boyfriend down with an axe, and tried suicide. After looking at her son one day, she decided enough was enough and became sober. And that was an autobiographical account that I found off drugfree.org. Drug addiction is the compulsion to use drugs that turns a person's behavior deviant by prioritizing drugs over all other normal behaviors and activities, by creating a psychological dependence, affecting chemicals in the brain, and by creating physical effects. So to begin, I'll define what addiction is. According to Random House Dictionary, addiction is the state of being enslaved to a habit or practice to such an extent that to quit would cause severe trauma. In the case of drug addiction, the trauma could be convulsions, vomiting, through withdrawals. As we all know, we have reward centers in our brain. When we do something good, our brain remembers it and we're bound to do it again. The Addicted Brain is the title of this letter delivered by Harvard Mental Health, said that usually such stimulation takes effort. So for sex, you got to have the energy to find the mate and do the act. To have a good dinner, you need the energy to eat the meal and to cook it and prepare it. Well, with drugs, you either got to snort it, shoot it, or smoke it, and you're done. That's it. It offers a huge shortcut. And that brings me to the first aid here. Everything that I'm describing is going to happen essentially within this synapse here. There's a normal receptor. And normally it's closed until we have sex, eat a good meal, whatever. And then they open up. But right there, this is going to represent one of the chemicals that drugs deliver to the brain. It opens up passages. You really can't see it, but it opens up the passage in here. And it floods the brain with all these endorphins and dopamine. And it activates the receptors, creates a surge of good feelings. And once those plummet, you get cravings. When the cravings begin, that creates addiction. Which brings me to the next point. How does it affect chemicals in the brain? Marina E. Wolf wrote an article called Addiction in the June 2002 edition of Molecular Intervention. She said some drugs enter the brain and interfere with functions that normally remove dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine after their release. Continuing on, but with different chemicals, AnxietyZone.com says narcotics mimic endorphins and also stop neurons from shutting off dopamine production. Same site, different information. Stimulants increase dopamine production, but stop the absorption into the body. So what happens is, when you're doing drugs, you're increasing all these hormones and chemicals into your brain, which gives you the high. And your body is stopping the absorption, so they're staying saturated in your brain for long periods of time, longer than normal. Which brings me to my next point, the physical effects of it. DrugRehabThatWorks.com says long-term use of addictive drugs can cause an accumulation of drug residue in the body, creating cravings for years. And if you think about when you quit smoking, all that gunk stays in your lungs for several years after. Now that's not the addiction, but it proves that this residue can stay in your body for long periods of time. And Donna DeSmet and Jason Guerrero wrote a great article called Nicotine in the Science Journal. And this will bring me to my final couple of images. This is a normal person's receptor bed. An addict's bed looks like that. It doubles, triples, quadruples, whatever you want to say. As we do drugs, we, we grow new receptor beds and new receptors. But these new receptors are far weaker and less sensitive than these original ones, which means we need more of the drug, more of the alcohol, more of the whatever to get the same high or to get a better high. And I guess that just adds on to the addiction. So to sum everything up here briefly, a drug addict is not necessarily a bum. It's a debilitating disease because it actually affects the brain and changes the structure of the brain, which is something they can't do on their own. So just remember that a drug addiction is a compulsion, not necessarily just a choice, to use drugs that turns a person's behavior deviant by prioritizing drugs over all other normal behaviors and activities because of the psychological dependence, effects of the chemicals in the brain, and the physical effects. Thank you.